Alright, so we're from a company called Quilio, and we make music plugins specifically towards the real time audio effects. And so we were going over the bunch of like different ideas that we found in the jam file, and like we couldn't make up our mind because we liked a lot of them. But then Syed came up to us and started talking to us about how he wanted to like make it easy to play jazz chords. And then we sort of like got stuck on that. We're like, yeah, that's actually something that we like face trouble too as well. So we wanted to figure out a way to create some sort of an interface that helps you create these complex voicings, and not just add extensions, but also maybe choose where they sit in terms of with respect to your root node. So something like the voicing basically is the position of the extensions with respect to the root. So the approach that we're taking is super simple. Whoa. Okay. So let me just go back right here. So we sort of set like a scale. We expect the user to set a scale. This would be something like C major. Let's just go as simple as we can go, right? And then in C major, what we expect the user to input is maybe on a MIDI controller, or maybe even their voice, like they're singing in the C major scale and they sing a note and we register the note somehow. And yeah, so that's our first input from the user. Then the second input from the user will be from a separate device. What we are using at the moment is Launchpad X, right? And the advantage that we're sort of taking from this in terms of a user experience perspective is that we want the user to sort of perceive this as an XY pad of sorts, and not just like a bunch of notes that are thrown around over here. So the intention was to create complex chord voicings, right? So what we thought was, cool, let the first note that the user has played get registered by the system, and then after that you hit like one note somewhere, one pad, let's call it a pad. And that first pad that you hit brings out the root note that you actually either sung or you hit on a different MIDI controller or something. So once you hit that, and then you, what it does is, it then sort of arranges, I think like a better, where is that image? Alright, so let's imagine you hit like this. This is your first pad in this 8x8 grid, right? You hit that, and then what the tool does is it starts to map, let's say, relevant extensions that you could possibly add to this root note to create first a dyad, so basically a 2-note chord, and then progressively you can add other extensions as you go further away from this root note. So intuitively, if you want to make a more complex chord, what you have to do is basically stretch your hand in a more like uncomfortable position. And that's something that you'll be like, okay, right now I just want to play a simple, like, basic major, C major chord. So I'm just going to play like the first here, right? And then like what it does is it maps around in the same scale the other extensions that you can add, right? So for example, the roots here, then I know that now if I hit somewhere here, I can get the fifth added to this chord. As soon as I hit this pad, and I'm holding this down still, okay? This isn't something to play live with per se, it's more of something like come up with chord voicing that you actually like and suits what you're maybe singing, or you're playing like a lead to. Yeah, and then you hit 5, right? You hit the second pad that's like a pad away from this one. And when you hit that, what happens is now your, let's call it like center is around this. Because now at this point in time, 2 of your fingers have been occupied by this, and it's most likely that they're going to be adjacent fingers. So the next voicing or the next extension that you can add basically is centered around this, right? Because that was the last thing you just added. And yeah, so similar to as when you hit the first pad, everything centers around this, where the next relevant voicing, that relevant extension that you can add to this dyad to make a triad which supports the root, right? The whole idea here is to create a chord that basically supports the root over here. So then it maps out what are the most least dissonant extensions that you could add to this 2-note chord to make it a triad, which makes more relevance to support the root, right? And then yeah, and there's different ways to even reach here. Like if you go just a little that way. We went further. No. So if we progress and we like add another voice, like another, let's say in this case, what I did is I went and added a second, right? Because what happened was if I was here, if I hit this pad first and then this pad second, I could hit this pad as well, because I know that this is going to add this extension, which happens to be a second, but it is an octave before the octave of the root. So you're basically also choosing, you're getting to choose where the extension lies in terms of a voicing of the entire chord, right? So then again, now as soon as you hit that, the entire mapping again changes according to whatever algorithm we have set, and you can choose that. Wait, let's say that. So, sorry. Right, and now when you have this, now you have furthermore extensions that you can add, which have not been used yet, by the way. If you notice, like where the only things that we're presenting outside of the paths that you have already selected are notes that you haven't selected. Because there wouldn't be a point to come up with a chord where you're already using the same note again. The idea here is to come up with like a complex chord voicing that you can actually use. Not perform per se, but something that can accompany either your melody or whatever lead you're writing. Yeah, and again, as and when you consume more of these notes, obviously you start losing some like available notes in the scale itself. So what would eventually happen is some notes outside of the scale might also start showing up, right? And then basically you can add even more dissonance after that. So I guess it basically is just a new way, or sort of like an approach to creating chord voicings that are super complex intuitively in a way, but you're sort of doing that by adding more discomfort to your hand or like your finger arrangement. And that's sort of the idea that we've taken over here. We can like hear that. I can walk you through the pseudocode, but I think that will just take a little. So what we're doing, wait, no, this way.
Just press once.
So what we're doing right now is actually we're selecting a root, like a root note from the scale from the bottom row over here. So, okay, that's not there right now. It's probably shifted an octave. But what the idea was that initially we'd select like a root note, and then whatever the root note is, it's registered by the system. So if you select C, then what happens is the first pad that you hit wherever is going to be a C note, and then followed, let's just okay, that cable.
Should we just try playing directly from the laptop? That might...
No, it's okay. So we have the first note, right? And the second note is, yeah, that is the third. So that's a major, and then you can like, oh, that's hard to play.
So 3, 5, 7, 2.
Yeah, practically. So the thing is, the system basically changes the entire mapping as and when you add more voicing. So you won't necessarily know what you're going to get, but it's a good way to like experiment and try to see what actually works for your melody that's happening, because it's entirely based on the note that you're feeding it. Now, our original intention with this was to actually make like a harmony generator, like how Waves has harmony engine. Is it Antares Audio has harmony engine and it's Wave harmony? Yeah. So like basically you feed it your vocals and it studies in real time your pitch, and based on that it adds additional voices of your vocals, pitch shifted to like the relevant harmonies, right? So like it'll be like the other voicings in the chord basically, right? So what we want to do is sort of do that in a sort of way that Jacob does it, creating a harmonizer on here, but it's not something that you need to be super advanced with like music theory per se, or even an instrument for that matter. All you have to do is sing. If you know how to sing in a scale, you can sing a note and then it will register it, and then you can like add your own like choir as in when you're singing. That was sort of the idea that we had, but of course we didn't like have enough time to do that. But yeah, so that's basically the idea, and I think you want to go through the board.
Yep, sure.
So, I mean, the way it works is pretty straightforward. I mean, the bulk of this is really the way that the system is designed. Right now, we really only put down the C major scale. I mean, the point is, you stick to a scale, and you can sort of transpose the root and play chords within that scale. But what we'd like to do is sort of add other scales, all sorts of modes, and to at some point allow people to interact with those modes. I mean, this is just a small part of the system. We'd expect this to be used with other hardware, perhaps the type that could be used to modify the voicings. Something like the Joy-Con controller would be, a great addition to this. But anyhow, so what we've done is we've got effectively 4 of what we call available arrays. The way that these work are they're indices within the mode of a particular scale. And here with C major, we've taken the liberty of choosing if I press my index finger down here, what the next few notes correspond to. So the starting note is obviously a 0, that's a root. But as you can see here, the 3, 5, and 4 correspond to the next 3 pads effectively, and the 2, 7 correspond to the last 2. Now what we do with these digits are we use them as indices to extract the actual note offset from the scale. And what we're doing in order to enforce this sort of walking mechanism where the next available notes sort of move based on what note has been pressed, we're effectively rotating the available arrays and we're removing values from them. So in order to prevent someone from playing, say, the 3rd, the 5th, and then the 3rd again, well, we're taking 3 and 5 out of the array, out of all of those arrays, and we're also constraining, the rings that you see around the root pad. Sorry, I just forgot what I was saying a sec. All right, so what we do after this is we obtain the active index. We try to find out what the first note is, and we hold on to that information until that note is released. So for as long as the root note is held, we are effectively mapping the next few pads to the indices, which are mapped to the actual pitch offsets and semitones. And then we transform incoming MIDI on the basis of these offsets and then send it back out. And so that's effectively how it works. Yeah. Anything else? That's it. Hope you guys.
So you're playing it inside of Reaper, right? So how did that go there? Like what were you planning and how did you execute this?
So how do we build it? Yeah. So what we've done is we built a VST using a combination of Juice and our own engine. And as you can see, there's no UI at the moment, but that is fine as it's just a MIDI effect that's transformative. what we've done is we used Juice, which is effectively cross-platform, probably the only way you can write a MIDI effect that will work on multiple platforms right out of the box. And we ran into some funny issues. One of them that I spoke to Prashant about and truly embarrassed myself in front of Tom with, which was forgot to put a reference in the MIDI messages when I was transforming them. So they were being modified, nothing was getting sent back. But there were a few issues with getting the plugin to run as well. We realized that Ableton doesn't support Juice MIDI effects. We realized that AU, or audio units in Logic, don't support MIDI effects either. We tried all sorts of things, like trying to pretend that it was a synthesizer that also had MIDI input, and eventually we just decided, not worth it, let's get it running on Reaper and then see how we can extrapolate from there. I think it would be really interesting to see this as a hardware device, or something that runs sort of standalone that you can then plug into, that you can plug your MIDI controller into and use it to manipulate the notes that you already have. But that might be a long way to go. What do you think?
I actually kind of want to ask Sayan personally right now, what do you think? Because the problem that you were facing was, being able to come up with complex chord voicings, right? Without having to rack your brain looking at a piano and figure things out. So
Also, I really like how I don't have to think so much. Just press one button and
Yeah.
do the rest. My chances of getting something really good on a piano keyboard while doing that same thing, like not thinking and actually press something, are much lower.
Yeah.
So I think this really helps with that.
That because everything is so spread apart.
Everything is so easy to reach.
Because
you went on a piano, right?
Yeah, in a piano everything's so spread, and you guys have kind of
exactly.
Yeah.
brought everything of
Really
importance in fingers to it.
Correct. Yeah, so the intention is you don't need to know music theory to get to making music. I was going to say complex music, but I'm just going to say music. And it's sort of something that helps you generate harmonies. It just allows you to add your own pads. So for example, if I'm playing a piano thing and I may feed it into something that just randomly generates a bunch of numbers. So randomly generated bunch of numbers maps up to some of these pads for that matter, and then you've got a chord progression just going on top of the lead that you're playing in real time. So that's something also that you could think of. Yeah, I think that's what. Yeah,
I play jazz guitar and this is actually really helpful. One thing that I would like to see is extensions, like post octave extensions. So
Okay.
having a third again is not bad if it's from the next octave, like a 10th interval is a good thing to have.
Yeah.
And similarly ninths and those kind of extensions would be. And it seems like the way you programmed it is you just have to add it to the array.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
It seems really extensible for octaves.
So we had this additional idea as well, where we could stack octaves vertically on because right now what we're doing is basically going in a circular sort of manner around the note that you've hit last, right? So we were thinking we could stack octaves vertically, or alternatively, what we could do is have flattened or sharpened off those notes themselves, and if they lie in the scale, then it's more it's far less dissonant, I guess you could just say that. So we probably are to keep them more towards the upper side of the thing, so above what the note you just the pad that you just hit. And then if it's far more dissonant, just keep it below. So if we sort of thought of coming up with a mapping that allows you to do that as well, but that just got really complicated for this. So we were okay, let's just go ahead with a ring going around it.
I think it's already really good. Even with the idea of just having it to C major is fantastic because you can start with it.
Yeah.
One thing also is that if I knew, I want a C major chord and I want to find a hurry hum for a C major, I don't want to go to a minor third, So if there would be, for example, 4 buttons that say major, minor, dominant, diminished, and I click one of them and it gives me 4 different, the same program in 4 different ways, sort of.
So you mean options to choose whether?
Yeah, different probabilities for intervals that might lead to.
Right.
A diminished would just sharp everything, and
Got it.
major would never give you a sharp sort of.
Yeah, actually speaking of that, there was another thing that we thought of, which was basically we have on a launchpad here these other row of things to do.
Oh, that's perfect. actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Modifiers is basically what we were going to do. But then again, we were this is way too much because we also wanted to add a harmony engine and stuff. I'm never mind.
is really helpful.
Nice. Anyone else? Anything?
Would it work for if I don't want to play a chord but just want to play notes in a scale?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of like a benefit here of if you want to like play a melody that's complex, right? Because what this sort of offers you is like we saw what it offers you at the moment, right? You get to choose randomly based on how far it is from the previous note that you selected, how far off it is in terms of sounding relevant to the root, right? So what we also initially were going to do is sort of like a progression, and then we realized no, the goal was actually to like build chords primarily. So what we thought of for this specific thing, right, like as and when I was like coming up with this mapping, was what we could do is record over a period of time the notes that you have actually hit, and then based on that, it automatically sort of like updates the map based on the last note that you've hit. So you can choose the length of how many notes you have like recently played, and then based on that, it will change the mapping, or it will stay stationary for like two like notes that you hit recently or something like that. So there's a bunch of different combinations you can do here. But yeah, like definitely get useful for playing leads also as well.
And the mapping, is it dependent on a hardware or just regular?
No, so I mean, we happen to have a launchpad with us, so we were like, okay, let's make use of it. Right now, we could like extrapolate this like anything practically. So for example, if from the mapping, if we saw just one row, right, maybe you could like take that and apply that to just one keyboard, like that's it. And then all you gotta do is, if you want more complex voicing, you just gotta spread your fingers a little bit more, right, and you get complex voicing, which is relevant to whatever the root note you've played. So it's basically about I guess the idea here is being like solving problems for people who don't understand music theory, and that sort of like really interested us with respect to this problem that we wanted to solve. So just wanted to showcase how you can come up with different ways of, in terms of UX at least, to solve such problems basically.
Like Ableton has that scale lock feature.
Yeah, I mean,
Logic does not have that, so that's what I was trying to do. I talked to him and he said like you guys are working on something.
yeah. So that's also something really cool, right? There was another. Okay, cool. I think I'm just going to be dragging this way too much. Never mind.
All right. So big round of applause for. Okay, so we have Ali.
Yeah.
Are you ready with the setup? Okay. So just a quick reminder on the time. So we have to wrap up soon. So I think you only have